Prepariamo un grande classico della cucina italiana.
Let's prepare a great classic of Italian cuisine, which is Milanese Risotto. Let's start by putting some butter in a casserole, turning on the heat very low, and let's start with the rice. In this case, we are using a carnaroli rice, which is very good for risotto. Even yellow naan is a very good alternative. If we want maybe a more creamy, wavy risotto. So the first passage is toasting the rice, so removing the humidity from the rice grains. With the rice we have right now, there are some aged rice that are very good for risotto. These are very dehydrated. With new technology, these rices are completely dry, so the toasting phase even becomes useless. It's kind of needed to heat up the rice grains to give a homogeneous cooking, so letting it dry has almost become useless because these grains are kind of perfect. So let's heat up the rice. As you can see, the grains will start becoming translucent and shiny. You can touch it with your hands. When it's warm, you can add the broth. Let's add the onion, very finely minced. Even here there are many schools of thought. There's people who put it before, and people who put it later. People who pasteurize it on one side. This is a classical method. Everyone can prefer their own method, of course, but there has been a very big debate about the onion. The important thing is that we don't have the raw onion flavor. This is the noise you must hear when you add the broth. The important thing is that the onion is not raw at the end of the cooking. It must become a paste. You can choose your preferred method. Broth must be boiling hot. Every time you bathe the risotto, it must be very hot. Never go down with the temperature. Don't toast the rice too much because it will create a sort of film around the grain, and it will become it will separate from the other grains. It won't release the starch and it won't be creamy. You can use a vegetable broth. In this case it's a meat broth, so veal bones with some cold water, odors like celery, carrot and onion, boiling it and removing the impurities from the surface. Let it sub-boil for 1 hour, 2, 3. The more it boils, the more it takes flavor and it'll be tasty. Of course, making risotto with a meat broth gives a lot more substance to the rice. I prefer meat broth because saffron risotto is very easy. It has a few ingredients, so it gives a lot of substance to the flavor. Let's go on with the cooking. Every rice has its own cooking time. I don't agree with the very long cookings. A good rice has 10 to 13 minutes of cooking because it must be very al dente, so hardy, crunchy. If you want to give a more intense color, you can add some powdered saffron, just a little bit to get some color. Every time the rice requires broth, you can add some without putting it all together. The important thing is to stir it, especially during the first phases of the cooking. Continuously stirring. They say that it takes out more starch, but if you try to make a risotto in a pressure cooker without ever cooking, if it's well balanced, it will be as creamy as a rice that you've been continuously stirring, because the starch will be released in the broth in any case. The fundamental phase is the toasting that will make the difference in the final result. You can toast dry with oil, with butter. We respect tradition, especially in this case. because Milanese risotto is rich in butter, parmesan is rich in fat, and that makes the difference. You can blend it with some white wine to give acidity. I prefer to add some lemon drops in the thickening phase because it pairs very well with parmesan. Okay, let's keep cooking. We're almost done with the risotto cooking. So let's put in the saffron flowers. This is really an Italian excellence. It's the best in the world. You can find it in the whole Italy. You just have to use a little bit because it has a very strong flavor. And especially it is really expensive because it is still produced manually. Every flower is picked by hand, so it's really complex and difficult to make. There are no machineries that make it, so saffron is made as it used to be made. Of course, the price is it's very expensive, but with 1 gram of saffron you can make a lot of things because you just need a really little bit. 3 to 5 flowers are enough for one risotto. Just let it dry. Took a nice color. Let's salt. And now we will be thickening the risotto, so turn off the heat because the parmesan must not melt. It must not go over 90 degrees. Okay, so let's add some cold butter. We're ready to thicken. Always leave it slightly dry, not to risk, because once it has thickened, if it's too dry, you can still add some broth. But once it's soft, it's really difficult to adjust the texture. Let's add some cold butter because the thermal shock with the warm risotto will create a reaction that helps to whip up a lot of butter. Let's add a lot of butter and let's start stirring. Some more broth. As the temperature starts falling, we're adding the parmesan. The balance is all here between the butter and the parmesan. Salt and lemon, because it's just a few ingredients, but they must be dosed very well. Not to have one ingredient that prevails on the other. A little bit more and let's taste. Some salt, some more parm, butter, and let's acidify with some drops of lemon juice, not too much. See, as it's very creamy, typical risotto creaminess. Okay, the rice is ready. Now we can cover it, not to let it cool too much, and we're gonna let it rest 1 minute to let it set, and then we will plate up. Risotto is ready. Can be completed with some bone marrow. You can see it's nice and creamy. Let's decorate with some saffron. And the Milanese risotto is ready.